The original Resident Evil is the game that defined the survival horror genre, and 2 years after its release, Capcom developed a sequel that took everything that made the original great and improved upon it, and adding a few new additions that make this sequel one of the best games that the genre has to offer. Resident Evil 2 takes place 2 months after the events of the first game. You take control of Leon S. Kennedy, a police officer on his first day on the job, and Claire Redfield, looking for her brother Chris, one of the protagonists of the first game. The game came with 2 discs for the original PlayStation release, and you'll get to choose the character that you wanna play depending on which disc you've inserted first. This one is for Leon and this 2 is for Claire. Now, unlike the first game, choosing a character is no longer a difficulty selection. Yes, there are still some character specific items, but it's not as game changing as its predecessor, and each of the scenario has a different story to tell, so playing both of them is a must to know the whole story. Unlike the first game where you already know everything after playing as one of the characters. Resident Evil 2 takes a more fast-paced approach than the original, putting you right into the action immediately. The streets are overrun by zombies and you must go to the Raccoon City Police Department to take shelter. But you are not alone. Along the way, you'll meet Ada Wong, a character that was mentioned in the first game through notes, a mysterious lady looking for her boyfriend John, and Sherry, the daughter of the monster that's trying to kill you. Both of them are playable in specific areas of the game. Ada will accompany Leon on his scenario, while Claire has Sherry to protect on hers. And you'd better stay close to Sherry every time, as she often gets stuck on walls and is just way too slow to keep up. And after finishing the A scenario, you unlock the B scenario in which you take control of the other character and see the events unfold from their perspective. You'll mostly be solving the same puzzles again with some of the items you arrange, and with a few unique boss fights as well. The story is not really worth explaining as the timeline of the events of the A and B scenario is a bit hard to follow.
It looks like your party has been cancelled.
And after that, there's still the other alternative scenario, so you're basically getting 4 games in one. The gameplay mechanics are still the same as its predecessor. It still uses tank controls and pre-rendered backgrounds. But everything has now been improved, from the graphics to the controls, and even the voice acting. The jump scares are also much more effective than the first game. Even if I already knew that they were coming, they still managed to make me jump out of my seat multiple times. The newest addition to this sequel is the zapping system. Depending on your actions, the other character scenario will be affected. For example, if you take an item in the A scenario, it means that it won't be available for the other character in their scenario. When I played the game for the first time, the controls just blew me away. It felt completely different from the original. When fighting the enemies, it actually feels like it has a weight to it, which makes the combat more satisfying. When injured, character would limp, indicating their health status, and your movement speed will also be a lot slower, which makes it harder to dodge enemies, and requires you to heal if you want to run faster. However, dying is not such a bad thing, as there are quite a lot of unique death animations for each enemy type, so even when you're dying, the game still rewards you. I was actually expecting that we'd get to explore more of the streets of Raccoon City, that the RPD was nothing more than an obstacle, and after 30 minutes in, we'd finally be back on the streets. But then the game just kept on going and going. Every single video about Resident Evil 2 says that the game takes place in the streets of Raccoon City, but in truth, it mostly takes place in the RPD, which kind of left me disappointed, though it's not the game's fault. Yes, the RPD may not be as creepy as the Spencer Mansion, but it's still a good setting, and it even has the same structure as the mansion. There are still some disturbing files to read and puzzles to solve around the RPD. If the puzzles from the first game were easy, well, I don't even know if I could call Resident Evil 2's puzzles. It's so easy that I could even finish them by just randomly guessing things. But at least the long and boring dragging puzzles have been reduced. Though something that's been bothering me is that the puzzle feels a bit out of place. It made sense in the first game as the mansion was intended to be some kind of a testing location for Umbrella. But having puzzles on a police station is just weird, and I know it's supposed to be a museum in the past, but still. Of course, you'll be encountering a few enemies as well. Some of the enemies from the first game return, such as the Cerberus, giant spiders, and the zombies with more variants. And there are also some new enemies, from the iconic Lickers, which replaces the annoying hunters from the first game, to Plant 43, an infected plant with legs. There's also the Tyrant, which chases the other character on the B scenario. When entering a door, you'll be greeted by a numerous amount of zombies, so even when the game is still loading, you should never let go the controller. Ammo and health items are still pretty scarce, meaning you still have to conserve them if you wanna be able to make it through the end. It puts you in a lot of desperate situations where you only have a few shots left and it's not even enough to kill all of the enemies in the room. And the terror doesn't end there. After finishing the game with an A rank, you'll unlock the minigame called the Fourth Survivor, where you take control of Hunk, one of the members of Alpha Team sent by Umbrella to retrieve the G-Virus sample. You must make your way to the RPD's rooftop while battling the undead and other creatures with only a limited ammo. There's also the Tofu Survivor, which is basically just the Fourth Survivor but Hunk has been replaced by a tofu. Sadly, I didn't get to unlock these minigames, as I used a special weapon on the B scenario which rendered my run invalid, but it looks like a fun minigame nonetheless. The game received a remake in 2019, which completely redone the entire game with different gameplay mechanic, changing the iconic camera angle to an over-the-shoulder perspective, similar to the recent RE titles, which I'm very excited to experience myself.
Let's split up, look for any survivors, and get out of here.
Capcom's Resident Evil 2 managed to improve on almost every single thing about the original. This sequel not only set a standard on what a sequel should be, but also showed that the Resident Evil game is not just a simple B-horror. It'll be hard to match Resident Evil 2's greatness.
I have to find you.
I would like to give Woo Reviews a shoutout for making this video possible. You guys should check his channel out, link is on the description. And if you want me to review a specific horror game, then put it in the comments below.